Thank you for downloading this Council on Foreign Relations video. CFR is an independent national membership organization and nonpartisan research center. For more information, please visit us online at cfr.org.
Good evening. Welcome to this evening's Council on Foreign Relations meeting with Police Commissioner Kelly. The meeting is on the record. When Henry Kissinger was introduced at a similar gathering, the moderator said, our guest really needs no introduction. You are all familiar with his many accomplishments. And Henry interrupted and said, please, tell them about my many accomplishments. And mindful of this, I will speak briefly, because if I don't, Ray will never forgive me, on some of the accomplishments of our police commissioner, whose rich biography is presented in your program. Ray Kelly, like most visionaries, is a student of history. And history teaches us that the police commissioner of the city of New York is at least as important as the mayor. No mayor, he would deny this. This part is off the record. No mayor of the city of New York has ever gone on to higher office. But two police commissioners have gone on to higher office. Both are great favorites of mine. One was Thomas Murphy, who became a federal judge, a great federal judge. And the other was Teddy Roosevelt, who, like our guest, instituted transforming changes in the NYPD. No police commissioner in our history has been as qualified as Ray Kelly at the time he took office. A 38-year veteran of the NYPD, he is the only person to hold his post for a second separate tenure. During his term in office, crime is down 40% from 2001 levels. Homicides in particular are at the lowest levels since 1961, when they started keeping accurate records. And this has been no accident. Commissioner Kelly established a real-time crime center, a state-of-the-art facility that uses data mining to search millions of computer records and put investigative leads into the hands of investigators in the field. He designed a program called Operation Impact that drove crime down by concentrating police resources in high-crime areas. Since 9/11, terrorist attacks have been non-existent in New York, as we all know, thank God. But few know the dimensions of the horrific plots, which I'm sure he might tell you about, that have been thwarted by the elite counterterrorism units that Ray Kelly created. No wonder General Barry McCaffrey, when he was here, said from this very podium that the NYPD is the greatest security organization on the face of the earth today. This evening, Commissioner Kelly will deliver some prepared remarks about the post-9/11 world. Then he and I will have a conversation, and finally, he will take your questions. The session is on the record, as I said, and you are invited to turn your cell phones and BlackBerries on, but only after the meeting is concluded. I'm honored to give you Police Commissioner Kelly.
Thank you, James. Jim and I go back a fairly long way. I do have some prepared remarks, and obviously Jim and I are going to sit up here and hopefully I'll be able to answer some questions. Not too long ago, it would have been somewhat unlikely for a New York City Police Commissioner to appear before this forum. But this is my second visit to the Council in 4 years. That's because since 2002, the New York City Police Department, obviously a municipal police agency, has adopted an intensely international focus. And we've reorganized the department to accommodate this worldview. Now, almost 7.5 years ago, we became the first police department in the country to develop our own counterterrorism bureau. We restructured our intelligence division and appointed leaders with exceptional credentials to guide our efforts. They include our Deputy Commissioner of Intelligence, David Cohn, a 35-year veteran of the Central Intelligence Agency, who led both the operational and the analytical arms of the agency. Deputy Commissioner of Counterterrorism, Richard Falkenrath, a Harvard scholar and a former White House advisor on Homeland Security. And we're fortunate to have with us this evening Richard's predecessor, Mike Sheehan. Mike did a phenomenal job. I think Mike is still here. Mike, are you here? There he is, right there. Mike was Deputy Commissioner of Counterterrorism #2. Mike was a former ambassador for counterterrorism at the State Department, a member of the both Bush 1 and Clinton NSC staff, and a West Point graduate, a former Green Beret. So just an outstanding individual, and did an outstanding job with the department. So good to have you here tonight, Mike. Now, with the help of these and other experts, we are constantly studying events worldwide and assessing their implications for our city. We also have a lot to learn from institutions like the Council. This past November, we invited your president, Dr. Richard Haas, to address an audience of our senior executives at police headquarters. Richard was part of a distinguished speaker program that we created. Other participants have included former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, King Abdullah of Jordan, the Emir of Qatar, former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, Generals Barry McCaffrey and Bernard Traynor, and top international journalists such as George Packer and Peter Bergen. You might say that the NYPD has aspired to become a council on foreign relations with guns. Now, these discussions have greatly enhanced our understanding of the terrorist threat facing New York City, a threat that unfortunately shows no signs of abating. If you look at the intelligence, and I can assure you look at it closely every day, you understand that Al-Qaeda is an extremely resilient organization. Despite repeated blows to its leadership by the U.S. military and expanded predator strikes, we see a continual replacement process of key operatives at the second and third tier level. Aided by a sanctuary in the Fatah and the Northwest Territories of Pakistan, this has given Al-Qaeda a consistent ability to plot against the West. Obviously, the most important leaders remain in place, Osama bin Laden and Ayman al-Zawahiri. We know from the recorded messages that they continue to make that their voices and directives are still being heard. They're being helped in this regard by an American spokesman, Adam Gadon, who enables them to communicate directly with Western audiences. Al-Qaeda also continues to build a web of alliances with like-minded groups around the globe. From the Taliban and Lashkar-e-Taiba in Pakistan, to Jabhat Islamiyah in Indonesia, to Salafists in Algeria, and Shabab in Somalia. From the intelligence we receive about these groups and looking at their public statements, we know that New York City remains the #1 target of global Islamic terrorism. Many tend to forget, but since 9/11, we've been the subject of 7 major plots here in New York. They include a plan to bring down the Brooklyn Bridge, to blow up financial institutions like the New York Stock Exchange and Citigroup headquarters, to smuggle explosive materials into Manhattan in shipping containers, and to release cyanide gas in the subway system. There was also a scheme by a homegrown terrorist to bomb the subway station at Herald Square, another to blow up the path tunnels and retaining walls at Ground Zero, and a conspiracy to explode the jet fuel pipeline and supply tanks at John F. Kennedy Airport. Last summer, we also saw the arrest of Afia Siddiqui, an American-educated al-Qaeda operative. She was found in Afghanistan carrying notes about a mass casualty attack and references to the Empire State Building, Wall Street, and the Brooklyn Bridge. So for the police departments, from our standpoint, we see no reason whatsoever to let our guard down. In addition, to al-Qaeda and its regional affiliates, which make up the first two tiers of the terrorist threat. We are very concerned about a dangerous third tier, which is homegrown terrorism. Indeed, the majority of successful terrorist attacks in the West since September 11th have been carried out by individuals living in the countries that they targeted. In New York, we saw an example of this in the failed 2004 plot against Herald Square. It was conceived by two Brooklyn-based extremists, outraged over the abuses at Abu Ghraib prison in Iraq. Given the challenge this threat presents, we've made an attempt to understand it more thoroughly. In 2007, two of our intelligence analysts undertook a study of the process of radicalization. Through a detailed analysis of case studies worldwide, they provided a number of valuable insights we shared with the public and other law enforcement agencies. We've taken the same highly analytical approach when it comes to our study of the different tactics terrorists use. We've compiled manuals on trends in improvised explosive devices and shared them with our bomb squad. We've prepared briefings on suicide bombings in Israel and truck bombs in Afghanistan and Iraq. We've devised methods to intercept a dirty bomb attack and to counter commando-style assaults like those that we saw in Mumbai and Lahore. Our counterterrorism strategies are multi-layered, and our alliances to defeat terror extend far and wide, from the 5 boroughs of Manhattan to cities around the world. We posted detectives and senior officers in 11 international cities, where they partner with local police agencies, respond to the scene of terrorist events, and report back to our department on the methods used. We presently have offices stationed in Abu Dhabi, in Amman, in London, in Lyon, France, in Paris, in Madrid, in Montreal, in Toronto, in Singapore, in Tel Aviv, and in Dominican Republic. Their work is supplemented by a core of civilian intelligence analysts with expert knowledge of counterterrorism and foreign affairs. We recruited from within our ranks hundreds of native speakers of languages such as Arabic, Dari, Farsi, Urdu, Pashto, Bengali. We tested them for fluency and reassigned them to counterterrorism duties. These include monitoring cyberspace for any potential threats to New York. Perhaps it is because of NYPD's reach into the international arena that we are being targeted for computer hacking in much the same way the Pentagon has been with its plans for the Joint Strike Fighter. You may have seen the lead story in the Wall Street Journal yesterday concerning this. We've documented that computers with IP addresses in China, the Netherlands, and other countries are engaged in unauthorized scanning of NYPD computers at the rate of 70,000 attempts a day, looking for opportunities to hack into our system. So far, all attempts have failed due to a robust protective system that we constructed over the last 7 years. Nevertheless, it's a threat that we must continue to pay close attention to every day. Our primary conduit for terrorist-related information about New York is the Joint Terrorism Task Force with the FBI. We bolstered our representation on the JTTF from 17 detectives on September 11, 2001, to more than 120 today. Through a program called Operation Sentry, we work with almost 100 law enforcement agencies up and down the East Coast to generate leads and to generate information. Our partnership with the private sector gives us a network of additional eyes and ears. Through our NYPD SHIELD program, a program that Mike Sheehan had a great deal to do in initiating, we share news and information with 6,000 private security managers by way of a password-protected website and in exclusive briefings at police headquarters. Under Operation Nexus, our detectives make thousands of visits to the kind of businesses that might be exploited by terrorists, such as truck rental companies, scuba shops, and fertilizer stores. Ideally, we want to stop any threat in its earliest stages. But we have to be prepared if, God forbid, it already comes our way. under a partnership with the Department of Homeland Security and 65 law enforcement agencies throughout our region. We're placing a ring of radiation detectors around the city to stop a nuclear or dirty bomb from entering the 5 boroughs. As part of our Lower Manhattan Security Initiative, dozens of private companies have given us direct access to the live feeds from their surveillance cameras. Combined with our own cameras and license plate recognition readers, we're getting a detailed view of activity downtown. Every day, based on intelligence, we deploy large convoys of patrol cars with emergency lights and sirens on to make sudden, unannounced visits to iconic and sensitive locations. Always get a lot of questions about that phenomena. Lots of radio cars moving around the city. We're constantly looking to disrupt surveillance, to let any would-be terrorists know that we're watching all the time and that we could be just about anywhere. We conduct daily, unannounced inspections of subway trains, as well as track systems and tunnels. After the London transit system was bombed in 2005, we launched a new program to protect the subways. Passengers are informed in advance that large bags and backpacks are subject to search. To date, we've instituted over 65,000 checkpoints at stations across the city. Taken together, these measures have helped to make New York City safer than it has ever been from a terrorist attack. But again, we are under no illusions. As we continue to succeed in protecting the city, and as the memory of September 11th fades, we in the police department must never forget that New York remains the world's most enduring terrorist target. We must bear this in mind, especially in the midst of a tough economy, and as the public's attention and that of the media turns to other issues. We also have to contend with the reality of limited resources. Like all city agencies, the police department has been called on to make difficult, painful budget cuts. So far, we've had to reduce recruit classes to about 1/4 of the normal size. We don't know yet what effect the federal stimulus package will have on our future hiring, but we remain hopeful that it will provide some relief. But in the meantime, our imperative is a very simple one. We have to continue to do more with less without compromising any aspect of our mission. While that task may sound daunting, it's worth remembering that we once faced it before. After September 11th, when the city confronted a perfect storm of economic and security challenges, the police department devised strategies to use our resources more efficiently. So far, those efforts have paid off. Today, despite having 5,000 fewer officers in our ranks than we had in fiscal year 2001, crime is down, as Jim said, by nearly 40% from where it was 8 years ago. At the same time, we built a powerful deterrent to terrorism. Our challenge, and one we share with you, is to make the city's defense our highest priority, to keep our ears close to the ground here in New York and our eyes fixed to the horizon. The police department looks forward to your continued support in that all-important work. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Well, thank you, Ray, for your extraordinary service and also for those remarks. And I was curious as to, just to start, what does your day look like? How much time is spent on counterterrorism? How much is spent on anti-crime? And how does the day begin and how does it end?
Well, no 2 days look alike, but the morning is pretty much always the same. We start with a counterterrorism brief. I sit down with Commissioner Cohn and Commissioner Falkenrath and sometimes key members of their staff to get a sense of what's happened in the last 24 hours. And that is a perspective of what's happened globally and what's happened locally. Obviously, we have some of our own investigations going on right here. As I said in my prepared remarks, we have officers assigned overseas. We're gathering information from them. We're looking at our open source material that comes in. The analysts that I mentioned are really world class. We have a cadre of about 30 analysts divided roughly evenly between our intelligence division and our counterterrorism bureau. They're from some of the top educational institutions in the country. We have people here from Harvard Law School and Harvard undergraduate and really the top schools, and they just do an excellent job of synthesizing information, gathering it and putting it in sort of digestible form. And that's the type of information it's used in a lot of places in the department, but when we have those mobilizations, those deployments of lots of police cars in the morning, we do that several times a day, they're getting that information as well. They're being briefed by our inspectors who are receiving their information from our analysts. So, but after the, after our terrorist briefing, there's usually some ceremonial aspect, perhaps a promotion ceremony of some sort. We have 52,000 employees. We have roughly 36,000 uniform officers now, the rest of the civilian employees. So there's lots of different events that happen during the day. There's crime strategy meetings. I'll go to community meetings. I go to community council meetings, usually in the evening. And then there's always the possibility of some, unscheduled event happening. Officer may be hurt. I've spent a lot of time in hospitals. And, as I say, no 2 days are probably exactly alike, but we start off with that counterterrorism brief in the morning.
Now, you said that you've succeeded in giving the department an international focus, which it certainly didn't have before, and you're noted for being a student of history and thinking outside the box. It was unprecedented, certainly, to appoint as top commissioners people who came from outside the department, Cohen, Sheehan, Falkenrath. And did this create any problems within the police culture?
It really created or very few internal problems, because the police department is really a hierarchical organization. It's very well structured. They may be grumbling, but they're going to do what the commissioner wants them to do. I won't necessarily hear it, but it'll be going on. There was some, we've assigned people overseas, and there was some, I think, resistance to that in the federal government. Sort of who are they? This is our job. What do they think they are? But of course, we're a city that's been attacked twice, and we want to do everything we possibly can do to see that it doesn't happen again. That all quieted down when Bob Mueller came to visit a few years ago. He had a briefing on what we're doing. I think it's fair to say, and he'll say, that he was very impressed with what's going on in the department, and whatever resistance, at least overt resistance, that was happening from the federal side of the house quieted down.
So certainly, immediately after 9/11, there was said to be some tension between the NYPD and the federal agency, FBI, and the CIA. But since the formation of the Joint Terrorism Task Force, do you think that's improved considerably?
Oh, yes. No, it's improved tremendously. Joint Terrorist Task was actually started in New York in 1980, so they've been around a while. Now the FBI has over 100 of them. And basically, the FBI is at the core of all of these task forces, and other agencies are sort of appended to it, something that we'd like to change and have it more marbleized. But there is a free exchange of information. And quite frankly, if something happens, nobody wants to be caught holding the bag, so to speak. So that's one of the motivators for the exchange of information. But we have a strong working relationship. I can't say that there's a total absence of tension, but generally speaking, we get along well.
Well, there are some amazing anecdotes. There was the hotel bombings in Jordan. There was the Madrid train bombing. There was the London tube bombing. And NYPD detectives were on the scene almost immediately within a very short time. What do they hope to accomplish for New York City?
We want to get any bit of information that's going to help us better protect the city, and we want to get it as quickly as possible. When the London bombings happened, they happened at 8 o'clock in the morning. 3 of them happened in the subway system. The 4th was 8:52 in the morning on a bus. And now we're 5 hours, of course, behind London. So we had our officer embedded in headquarters in the New Scotland Yard. And he was able to give us real-time information from their command center, because we didn't know, nobody knew, whether or not this was part of a worldwide series of attacks. So at the very least, what we wanted to do was to give some comfort to the riding public in New York City. So we had enough time with the specifics that he gave us to deploy additional resources, to hold on to the officers who were working through the night, give them some basic information, to bring on new officers and have them ride on subway trains and deploy them to the stations around the city. When the Madrid bombing, when that bombing took place, we sent our liaison officer from Tel Aviv to Madrid. He arrived that day, and then we sent a team of police officers who are expert in the transit system and how trains are constructed. We sent them there the next day, and to get any bit of information that would help us better protect ourselves. What we did do is we found out that the bombs were actually assembled a few blocks away from the train station. So we started our patrols, or made certain that our patrols did sort of a perimeter check on all stations further out than the immediate area of the station.
That was
itself.
new. Usually they've been known to be assembled some distance away.
That's right. Right.
Even the first attack on the World Trade Center, they were assembled in New Jersey.
Yeah, and this is a little bit of information, but you don't know how significant it is when you get it. Now, we did not get a report on the Madrid bombing from the federal government for 18 months. We were able to get our information literally that day, and increasing information. Now, that's just the way the federal government works. I've worked there myself for 4.5 years. And so it's not really a criticism, it's just an observation. It is just a slower series of institutions that they have assembled down there. And we need to act as quickly as possible here.
Let's take one of the most recent horrific attacks internationally, Mumbai. That was Lashkar. You had officers on the scene also quite quickly. Right. And what did you learn from the attack of Mumbai on the 2 hotels?
The attacks on Mumbai happened, it took 60 hours. They started November 26th, just a few hours before our Thanksgiving, Wednesday before, and ended on November 29th. We dispatched our officers literally right after the shooting stopped on November 30th. We dispatched a team of 3 officers, one of whom had been in Mumbai 2 years before because there was a series of commuter train attacks in Mumbai. We wanted to get information then, so we sent him to Mumbai. He was actually in Amman, Jordan. We sent him to Mumbai to get information in 2007, and he made some excellent contacts. So we used his contacts again to have them go there and to interview high-level police officials, and they were very receptive, to visit the crime scenes and to take lots of pictures. They went to the train station. They talked to the station manager. What we found out, and we put in a very, I think, well-done, comprehensive report that we provided to the FBI on December 5th. We found that the shooting that was done was very well targeted. We don't think that automatic weapons were used, semi-automatic weapons, because there were no bullet holes that were high in the ceiling. Usually when you fire an automatic weapon, you have a certain amount of bullets that will go up higher. That the police were overwhelmed, that they simply were not trained to handle this. They were not sufficiently armed. And all of this information was transmitted to an auditorium of NYPD SHIELD members, about 400 members in our auditorium, with pictures, and our 3 investigators on a live feed from Mumbai to our audience full of SHIELD members. That day, we had a tabletop exercise with all the senior commanders, roughly simulating what happened in Mumbai, and a actual tactical exercise out in Floyd Bennett Field, where we had our emergency service officers engage in a similar Mumbai incident. And that was fed to us by closed circuit TV. What I was concerned about was a protracted situation such as that, where you might have 10 or more individual scenes going on in New York City with hostages perhaps being taken. We have 400 officers that are extremely well trained. We think they are the best in the business at what they do, our emergency service officers. But if we had a longer-term event, I was concerned that we may not have enough well-trained people. So as a result of what happened in Mumbai, we've embarked on a training program in heavy weapons for members of our Organized Crime Control Bureau, which is essentially our narcotics division and some other investigative units, our range personnel, our firing range personnel. And we also realized that these attackers were very familiar with the hotels and the targets that they hit. So we've taken our cadre of emergency service supervisors, sent them to major hotels in the city with cameras, and they've had tours of all of the hotels, primarily in Midtown Manhattan, but we're now going out to the hotels at the airports, so that we are familiar, our first responders are familiar with the sort of nooks and crannies of the major hotels in New York.
I can't help but ask, but are your sharpshooters as good as the Navy SEALs?
Well, I hope so. That was some job. So that's some of the things we learned from Mumbai. But again, we got there quickly. The lessons were learned as quickly as we could extract them, and then we disseminated it quickly.
You spoke about the radicalization of homegrown terrorists. I mean, what goes into a terrorist? I mean, how do they reach them, and how do they radicalize people who would otherwise be peaceful?
That's no easy answer. What we did do under the direction of Larry Sanchez, who former CIA employee who works for us, two of our analysts, Mitch Silver and Alvin Bott, engaged in producing a radicalization study. And they went to various locations of terrorist events throughout the world. They went to Amsterdam, where the Theo Van Gogh was assassinated. They looked at our own events here. They went to Australia for the Pandemics group. And they gathered a body of information that gives some insights. This is not the Rosetta Stone, but it's some insight into how terrorists are developed. These so-called unremarkable people who decide to kill innocent people in their own country, and they came to certain observations that usually an event that might trigger this tendency towards radicalization, like Abu Ghraib, which I talked about in my remarks, that there's often a sanctioner, somebody who is not necessarily a religious leader or religious person, someone who they look up to, someone who sort of crystallizes their thoughts. And then there is this process could take a while, but there's a fairly quick decision to decide on doing jihad, the jihadization process. And we looked at the events, the Toronto 18, they're called. That's where there was a part of the plot was to, well, not far-fetched, it's difficult to say, but they were going to behead the Prime Minister of Canada. But the sanctioner in that group was actually somebody who was almost a janitor of a mosque in Toronto. So there's not a clear template, but at least there's some clarity starting to be given to the process. I advise anybody interested in this issue to go to our website, which is www.nyc.gov/NYPD. And this report, it's a 90-page report. It's on the website. I think they did an excellent job.
One last question, Ray, before I open it up. And one has the sense that there's been the increased use of surveillance cameras in not only the war on terror, but also anti-terrorism activity, but also crime and anti-crime activity. Has that been stepped up, and where are the cameras placed, and do you have people watching them 24/7, and have you found it to be effective?
Well, I would like to greatly increase the number of cameras that we have in the city. You know, London has like 500,000 cameras. So we just put in an overlay of 500 cameras in areas throughout the city, in every one of our 8 borough commands. They're essentially in higher crime areas, and they have a sign that says NYPD security camera. These cameras are not monitored.
Well, you have that. You don't need to turn the camera on.
Well, no, we turn the camera on. And they're not monitored, but if something happens, you can go back and download it, and we can run a live operation to those cameras if we so choose. Now, I mentioned the Lower Manhattan Security Initiative. We are collaborating with private sector in that area, and we hope to have a total of 3,000 cameras, 1,000 public sector, 2,000 private sector cameras brought together. And they will be monitored in a coordination center, which is already up and running in Lower Manhattan. That center will be manned by both police officers and private security folks. So we're looking to put in more cameras, no question about it. We're looking to get money from the federal government to help us do that. Now, I want to stress that all of these cameras are in public places. We're not putting them in any stretch of the imagination in areas where there is a reasonable expectation of privacy. You know, if you go into a supermarket or into a department store, your picture is taken 30 times. By the way, we have found this issue always surfaces, and the Civil Liberties Union will bring it up, but there is really not much of a constituency that is against cameras. It's just people have accepted it as a fact of life. We've done surveys, and about 80% of the people like the idea of having surveillance cameras in public spaces.
Well, I'd now like to invite everyone here to join in this conversation. By everyone, I exclude members of the press because the commissioner has said he will take questions from members of the press after the meeting. So I ask the questions come from members. I ask that they be questions, not statements. One question. I guess you all know the drill. Wait for the microphone. Speak directly into it. Stand, state your name and affiliation, and know the commission will be delighted to take your questions. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm Inger Elliott, IME Limited. I wonder if you would make comment about Cheney's remarks, because you've brought up Abu Ghraib a number of times. Whoops. You brought up that in conversation. But I wonder if you would might comment about the idea of torture versus getting information from that person.
Well, I would support the president's position. I don't think we should engage in torture. And it may provide some short-term gain, but I think in the big picture, it's not helpful in the overall efforts, and I just don't think it's the way we should be doing business.
Yes, sir.
I'm Patrick Burns, Euclid Systems. Commissioner, the Vice President has suggested that the former Vice President has suggested that our President's actions have increased the risk of catastrophe. Would you comment on that?
I really can't. I don't know, what context he said that. I know he said that, but if we say, the President's actions releasing those memos, is that what you're talking about?
I think so.
Releasing the memos? I would,
Yes, he said increase the risk, as I believe he said.
I really can't comment on that. I'm not certain exactly what he's referring to, but I would say that it was a tough decision for the President to make. I probably would have advised not to release those memos because I think it can undermine our relations with our allies, with other countries in the future. But I understand there's lots of pressure to do that.
Roland.
Well, Roland Paul, a lawyer. Maybe I can focus this general question. Was any information gained from, I may mispronounce these guys' names, Zabaya or Mohammed Sheikh Khalid, or any of the other 26 who are known to have received aggressive interrogation techniques? Was any information received from them that was helpful in preventing or foiling a plot against New York City?
I believe that answer is yes. I mean, that information is out in the public domain. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed came forth with information, and that information was helpful in identifying Ayman Ferris, who was dispatched over here to scout out the Brooklyn Bridge.
Ella.
Hello, Ella Goodwin with AmeriCares. Could you talk a little bit about the NYPD's interaction with other police departments around the country and the mentoring role that it might play with other large cities, for example, LA, and also along the U.S.-Mexico border?
Well, we have a strong relationship with a lot of cities, and a lot of agencies send people here to New York to look and examine what we're doing, to take away what they think is helpful to them. That includes Los Angeles. The city that probably looks the most like New York is London, quite frankly, because of its topography and population, about 8 million people. So we have a very strong working relationship with London. But there are people here all the time and exchanging information. And we're certainly open to that. Now, you talked about the border, I'm sorry, southwest border.
Yeah, just the interaction with cross-border activity, particularly in the border states with Mexico.
We don't have that much contact, quite frankly. I used to be the Customs Commissioner. I had a lot more focus in those days on what was going on the border. But we don't have any direct relationship with law enforcement agencies on the border. If something arises, if we need information, there's a network in which we can get that information. But I can only tell you that people ask me, what's the effect of all the violence that's going on in Mexico? What does it mean here in New York? What we see is an increase in price in drugs and a diminishment in the quality of drugs that appear on the street.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for the very lucid and valuable comments. I'm glad to know you're taking care of us. Mm-hmm. I'm Carol Brookins. I'm former U.S. Director on the board of the World Bank. Moved back to New York after 25 years. Mm-hmm. I do have a question regarding this current version of jihad, and so much of what began was linked to the Palestinian problem and the Arab-Israeli problem. Hypothetically, the Arab-Israeli problem is resolved 12 months from today. Is this version of jihad going to be diminished, or does it have a life of its own?
Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be diminished. I think there'll always be reasons if you want a reason. And I think there are people out there who want to hurt us and want to hurt us badly. New York is a target that gives them everything they want. It's communications capital, the financial capital. And I'm pretty parochial. I'm looking at the five boroughs here. But if the Israeli-Palestinian problem was solved tomorrow, unfortunately, I think you wouldn't see much of a reduction at all in that desire to come here. You know, the hotbeds of problems throughout the world. Obviously, we talked about the Fatah and the Northwest Territories of Pakistan. It's an area of real concern for us now and has been for quite a while. Pakistan is an unstable country, and you know, what happens there can greatly impact us in this city. So no, unfortunately, I think that's a lot of people say that. I know, I hear that, but and I certainly hope something is worked out. But I don't think it's going to change the overall threat very much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Dick Huber from Antarctic Shipping. I also enjoyed your remarks. The mayor has made gun availability a big issue, and of course the National Rifle Association blocks every attempt at passing meaningful legislation. Do you think that with the new government there's any chance that something might be done to control this wild proliferation of firearms in our country and in New York City specifically?
I hope so, but I'm not optimistic. Gun control is the third rail of politics in Washington on both sides of the aisle. That's just the reality of the situation. The mayor has done a terrific job. He's really coalesced hundreds of mayors now around the issue. The most immediate challenge is to pass a law that will take away what we call the T. Hart Amendment. T. Hart is a congressman from Kansas, Wichita, Kansas, and he has put in an amendment or a rider to the Bureau of Alcohol and Tobacco and Firearms budget funding, and he's done it for several years, that prevents them from exchanging information or allowing information to be exchanged among law enforcement agencies concerning where guns are coming from, where they're purchased. But I mean, that's an indication of the power of the NRA, and you're able to prevent law enforcement from getting information, exchanging information that will help us investigate gun crimes. So I'm not particularly optimistic, as I say, about a major change happening as far as national gun control strategies.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Brett Zabar with Aisling Capital. Thanks for joining us, Commissioner. As you know probably better than anyone, there's been a lot of debate around our readiness for a mass evacuation of Manhattan Island in the event of a chemical, nuclear, or biological attack. And we've either read or heard that the tabletop exercises have not ended well. For example, if the train tunnels are not accessible. Can you just comment on our readiness today for such an evacuation and the circumstances under which it might occur?
Well, evacuation is a major, major challenge. No question about it, and I certainly wouldn't want to sugarcoat it. There are plans in place, basically, where the city is cordoned off into sectors, about 100 sectors. Obviously, one thing that we're fortunate to have is an effective mass transit system. That's going to be helpful in any evacuation. I mean, to evacuate a city of over 8 million people is extremely difficult to do and would take a long time to do it. Now, to evacuate parts of the city would obviously be much easier. And there are plans coordinated by the Office of Emergency Management. We have a major role in it. The fire department has a major role in it. We exercise these plans. Hurricane response plans will be exercised, and some of them will involve evacuation. So we can evacuate portions of the city, but just the idea of evacuating the entire city, and where do you go? We talked about evacuation. Do you go through New York City? You evacuate Long Island. Do you go? How do you do that? The Long Island portion of New York City. Where do you go? Do you go out to Long Island? Do you go, upstate? These are all difficult issues, and they're thought about, but there are no easy answers to the problem.
Yes, sir.
My name is Michael Skoll of Skoll & Associates. Commissioner, you are uniquely qualified to compare what New York City is doing and what is being done in Washington. And I think the consensus, not just here, but a book has been written about the fact that New York is doing a better job in much of counterterrorism activity. If you had the power to change one thing in Washington in this area, what would you recommend?
It is a loaded question. What we're doing here suits us. We're a city that's been attacked twice. We have, as I mentioned, 7 other plots. So what we're doing is appropriate in my judgment for the city. There's some things the federal government simply can't do. One of the things that we're able to do is to use human beings to gather information for us, and that partly as a result of our tremendous diversity, the diversity of the city and the diversity of the department. And out of the last 7 police academy classes, and each of them had at least 900 recruits in that class, we had graduates born in 50 or more countries, which is simply phenomenal. So this gives us, as I say, great diversity, great language capability, the ability to do some sensitive investigations. Very difficult for the federal government to do that. Federal investigative agencies just don't have the sort of compact universe that we're dealing with. So we're fortunate. We're fortunate, but I really don't want to criticize other federal agencies. Having worked there, I know that the playing field is a lot different. Congress has a lot more involvement in the day-to-day operations in Washington than, say, the legislative body here in New York City. It's just a more complicated environment to work in. But we are blessed in the diversity of this city, and consequently the diversity of the department is our strength, and we're using it to make the department even better than every year it gets stronger and more effective in my judgment.
Lynn Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner, I wonder if you could comment on the upcoming trial of the fellow from Somalia, the pirate, and what, if any, threat that might have to the city. There have been some who have said, do we want another high-profile terrorism trial right here in New York?
We have a ways to go before we get to the trial. He just showed up the other day here. I don't see it as raising much of an issue here. I don't think it will increase threat level very much, if any. These are robbers. These are not terrorists. These are people who are just trying to get money, and so far they have not been associated with any terrorist group. There is a fairly strong terrorist operation in Somalia, Al-Shabaab, and it's something that we keep our eye on. There are pockets of Somali residents here in the United States, relatively few in New York, but in Minnesota, in Maine, and Toronto has a very large population. But our analysis shows that the pirate activity and the terrorist activity, if you will, are separate and very much apart right now. Could they come together at some time in the future? It's possible. But I just see this young person as as a robber trying to trying to get money in a very poor environment.
The lawyer says he's a juvenile delinquent.
Well,
yes, sir.
it's a question of how old he is, I guess.
Hi, Anish Malwani from McKinsey. One of the things about the Mumbai attacks was how the folks came in by the sea and attacked from the seawall. Can you speak about New York City being an archipelago with a lot of seafront, how we protect ourselves there and what the plans are?
Yeah. We have a very strong working relationship with the Coast Guard. We have our own harbor unit has a total of about 40 vessels. We have some pretty neat gear. We have a little submarine that we use to go under and take a look at the ships that are coming in. We even board the Queen Mary, believe it or not, when coming into harbor. We do it out by Ambrose Lightship. So we work, as I say, closely with the Coast Guard. We are, of course, designated to have the authority that the Coast Guard officers have in boarding ships. We're pretty vigilant. The Coast Guard is building a new command center here in New York, or coordination center. We'll be participating in that. So we have a lot of focus and a lot of attention paid to the water of New York, the waterways. We have almost 500 miles of coastline in New York City. We have our little surges, if you will, where boats come together. We have that with our radio cars, and we have it with our harbor craft as well. So I think, again, Mumbai is, the police, they acknowledge that they didn't respond well. We are in a much better position to respond if, God forbid, anything like that happens here. Our people on our boats are all heavily armed, and they're experienced in using those weapons.
John.
John Temple Swing. I really want to have you talk a bit about your foreign operations. To what degree are you cooperating well with the CIA and the FBI in your foreign operations, or are there turf problems?
Yeah, we operate, I think, well with both agencies. We have actually someone from the CIA who's signed up here. He works in our sort of a fusion center that we have. I get briefings from this individual, David Cohn, 35 years in the CIA, actual relationship with the agency. As far as the FBI is concerned, we have 120 of our detectives working on the Joint Terrorist Task Force. Our detectives went to Mombasa and brought this young man back with FBI agents. So we're working very, very closely together. I think the notion that there's a lot of friction between the federal agencies, the NYPD, just is not the case. Sometimes you'll have two agencies want to do a good job, and sort of where the rubber meets the road, there may be some tension. But at a higher level, everybody gets along, and generally speaking, there's mutual respect. CIA, DIA, FBI, ICE, which is the Customs Enforcement Unit, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. We work with all of these agencies every day. We do joint operations with them every day. So the relationship, in my judgment, has never been better. And I spent a long time in the New York City Police Department. I was in the federal government where I had federal agents that were reporting to me, and now back in the police department. I think our relationship is better now than it's ever been.
I'm afraid we have to wrap up, and I want to say thank you, Commissioner Kelly, for sharing your views with us this evening. Really remarkable insights, and as New Yorkers, we should all thank you for being Ray Kelly and for protecting us. And this is really, in a real sense, where the rubber does meet the road in government, and you certainly personify that. So,
thank you, Jim. Appreciate it.
Thank you for watching this Council on Foreign Relations video. For additional audio, video, and transcripts of CFR meetings, as well as expert analysis of international news, please visit us online at cfr.org.